Online, can you all hear us? Online, can you all hear us? Can someone say something to let us know?
I hear you. Thank you.
We can hear you.
Excellent. Thanks, everybody. Well, technology.
Hello, I hear you. Thank you. I can hear you.
Great. And so I'm James Pobiwa, and I am the chair of the Sustainable Economy Advisory Council, and I'd like to call the September 26th meeting to order. I will now do the roll call. Daisy Maldonado.
Here.
Thank you. Patricia Knighton.
Present.
Glenn Schiffbauer.
Present.
Thank you. Rob Black is not able to attend, excused. Cassie Arias. Jonathan Perry.
Present.
Mayani Barudin.
Present.
Otto Chavez. JT Willie. Wendy Atsity.
Present.
Thank you. Janine Yazzie. Joe Little.
Present.
Thank you. Marissa Naranjo. Great, thank you. Well, welcome everybody. I'd like to recognize that we're here in Tucumcari, New Mexico. We're really excited to be hosted by the North American Wind Technology Center and Mesa Lands Community College. I wanted to also thank, is Janet here too? Yes. Okay, Janet and Andy, just wanted to call you guys up. Thank you for having us, and I don't know if you want to say a few words. And please introduce.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm Andy Swap. I'm the director of the Wind Energy Sustainable Technology. And this is Janet Griffiths. She's the president of our faculty senate.
And I just wanted to welcome all of you to Mesa Lands Community College and to our wind technology program. Our administrators are all tied up today in a special training for adopting a new platform. And this was an all-day training, and I think they're locked in a room somewhere. So Andy asked me if I would come and welcome you, and it's a great honor to be able to welcome you to Tucumcari and to Mesa Lands Community College. I'm one of the faculty members here. We're very proud of our wind technology program, as we're proud of all of our programs, but extremely proud of this one. This was a very visible one. If you look at the turbine, you can see that from afar. But welcome to Tucumcari and to Mesa Lands. Thank you for coming.
And just before this, we were led on a tour of the facility and the training facility. Thank you to Andy for that. He'll be presenting a little bit later in the agenda. And now we have just a little bit of business to take care of. You all, committee members, council members, received on September 13th meeting notes from several different months that we were trying to make sure that we're catching up and in compliance on. So you received the meeting notes for February 9th, January 31st, February 28th, April 11th, July 25th, August 2nd, August 23rd. August 2nd and August 23rd were from 2022, and the others were from 2023. And so I hope you were able to review those, and I wanted to open it up for discussion, if there is any discussion, but also a motion to approve the notes from those meeting dates.
I would make a motion to approve those minutes if there's no other discussion.
Niggers.
Okay, so we have someone in the room that's acting inappropriately, and so we're gonna take care of that.
Will you mute it really quickly, because
Okay, we're gonna.
Continue.
This is Daisy. I second the motion to approve those previous minutes.
Thank you, Patricia and Daisy. So all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That passes, and we will make sure that those notes are posted online to the website. And so now we can get on to the fun part of the meeting. So I also just wanted to recognize a few folks in the room. Chair Shani Harvey from the Sustainable Economy Task Force. Welcome. Thanks for coming out here. We also have, I believe, Jennifer Myers from the Economic Development Department. She's the lead for community business and rural development. I believe she's here.
She's,
Great.
no,
Online, I think.
she's online, and we have Tim, who's our regional rep for this
Great.
area.
And Tim Hageman, thanks for joining us. And then I also believe we may have county manager for Quay, Daniel Zamora, potentially. Great, excellent. Thank you for joining us. And we'll move to the rest of our agenda, which is building New Mexico's wind power future. And I'd like to invite North Path Transmission Project, William Consuegra. Okay, well, thank you for joining us. You are the Director of Transmission Development in the West for Invenergy, right? Please join us, or where would you like to present?
Okay, sure, here's fine. Someone can activate the presentation. Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, and everyone online, committee members and others. My name is Will Consuegra, Director of Transmission Development for Invenergy. Invenergy, I'll explain who we are, but we are in New Mexico developing a project, my team at least, on New Mexico North Path, which will be a transmission line going from Union County, going down through Sandoval County up to the Four Corners area. And that's the Arcosa one. That's the next one. No, no worries. Okay, perfect. Let's see. Share it. Okay, perfect. And thank you also for our host. This is, I think, my third or fourth time out here. The first time to get a tour, as many of you did just now, second time with the Kid Wind Project. They were having a training for teachers, and it's definitely a great program that you have here, and we're always excited to come out here and support. New Mexico North Path, a transmission line that will help grow the wind economy in New Mexico. If you go to the next slide. Let me start off with talking about Invenergy. Invenergy is the world's leading privately held clean energy company. Our company in the last almost 25 years has developed about 30 gigawatts of sustainable power throughout the world. Wind, solar, energy storage, offshore wind, which is, if you Google us, we were just awarded a big contract for offshore wind in California, and then clean hydrogen, clean water, and transmission. Transmission is the division I work for. We have 4 projects being developed right now. Clean Path New York in New York, Grain Belt, which stretches across Missouri, Kansas, and Indiana, Cimarron Link, which is in Oklahoma, and New Mexico North Path. And I'm here to talk about that project. We'll go to the next slide. Invenergy Transmission is the newest division of the company. We do, though, through our other previous projects, have developed about 4,000 miles of transmission and collection lines. Our previous work in New Mexico was developing the Sagamore Wind Project in Roosevelt County. That was, at the time, the largest wind project developed, has been surpassed and will be surpassed by other projects, including one that another one of our divisions is going to build. We consider ourselves not just a good partner business-wise, but also a good neighbor. And so we invest annually over $400 million in the communities that we have projects in. And a lot of that is the relationships we have with landowners. We have relationships with over 12,000 landowners, the majority of which are ranchers and farmers. Another relationship we have that we just started at the beginning of this year is our partnership with New Mexico RETA, the Renewable Energy Transmission Authority. That organization was stood up in 2007. And the sole purpose of it is to encourage the development of transmission in New Mexico. They do have a lot of authority and powers as being a quasi-governmental agency. They do have the ability to give us their advice and counsel on how to develop these large transmission projects. One of their successes was Western Spirit that was went live a little over a year ago. And they also have other powers, taxation powers or taxation forgiving powers, as well as eminent domain. And so that is an organization that we're very happy to be partners with because we will be a success thanks to our partnership with RETA. You go to the next slide, thank you. Why Northern New Mexico? Northeastern New Mexico, in a study done by RETA in 2020, was found to have the best wind capacity potential in the entire state. An estimated 20,000 megawatts of wind can be harvested in that area of the state. Unfortunately, none is currently because of a lack of transmission lines. So that's the bridge that we're trying to cross. We're trying to create something that will let us, and specifically for this project, take the wind power from the northeast corner of the state, take it over the Four Corners area where the infrastructure exists to distribute that power. There's an existing structure that exists that we can plug right into and send the power to the metro areas as well as out of state. Next slide. We'll just jump past this one. I know the time is short. New Mexico North Path specifically will be a 4,000 megawatt high voltage direct current transmission line. What that means, that's the equivalent of powering 2 million homes. Obviously, that's more homes than we have in New Mexico, but it is definitely going to be a very large and very impactful project. You can go to the next slide. This is what the project will look like. The towers will be a guy wire stood up tower, which will minimize the foundation size required, will minimize the impact visually as well as on agricultural uses below, and will deliver a state-of-the-art project that will be more efficient than AC, will require less right-of-way. Our right-of-way is only 200 feet wide, and it'll be a lower cost project as well. We have a partnership with a company called Prysmian out of Pennsylvania that will sell for our 4 projects about 12,000 miles worth of cables for the project, creating jobs in the United States and keeping the development of this type of technology in the United States. Next slide. Tremendous benefits for this project. Like I mentioned, 4,000 megawatts of clean renewable energy. It's the equivalent of taking 1 million cars off the road by focusing on wind power versus fossil fuels. And it helps to meet the 50% renewable energy requirement of the New Mexico Energy Transition Act. That's 2030 goal of 50% utilities using power from renewable sources. That'll help. That picture right there is from the Albuquerque area. We know that New Mexico does have the 14th highest energy-related per capita carbon dioxide emissions in the state. We hope to help change that with the introduction of our project and the transmission line. And then the economic benefits are tremendous. It's a $2 billion project over the 400 miles, tens of millions of dollars in revenue to state, local governments, tribal governments, and direct payments to landowners, as well as thousands of jobs created during the construction period, as well as over 100 jobs created long-term on the line and on the converter stations at each end of the project. The next one. And I'll fly through these. I don't want to take up my counterparts' time, but when we looked at where we would take the power from, obviously it would make sense to go the way the bird flies, right? The crow flies from Union County to San Juan County. Unfortunately, that area is very difficult to traverse geographically. So we're taking the route down a southerly way. If you go to the next slide. And what we've done over the last couple of years is look at areas, studied them for environmental impacts, cultural impacts, et cetera. And on the next slide, we're at the point right now where we have limited it to 1 mile wide corridors that we're studying, talking to landowners, tribes, the state land office, et cetera. And next year, we're going to take part in the federal permitting process, basically the NEPA process, where we will get permission and have a route selected or recommended by the federal government, the BLM, that we will then traverse through 400 miles of private land, state land, and tribal land. And then the next slide. We've tried to be a good neighbor, as I mentioned, 9 counties. We've actively been involved with groups, universities, educational institutions, community colleges, economic forums, et cetera. We're trying to understand what the people of New Mexico need. I'm from New Mexico. I graduated from UNM Law School, and I'm very proud to be helping a project which will benefit the entire state. The next slide. We've done things including the fun stuff, going to county and state fairs, funding them, giving money for livestock auctions, et cetera, as well as doing things to support chambers of commerces and economic development organizations throughout the route. And then the last one. And then we have had a very robust tribal nations engagement, where we have met extensively with the 3 Pueblos and Navajo Nation that we are potentially going to be going through, and really understanding what the needs are of these communities. And so we hope that all of this work will come together to help us get approval from all the parties, get this line built, and have it in operation by the end of the decade. And that's it. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Fonseca. And sure. So I'm going to take just a really small pause here because I jumped around in the agenda and didn't ask our chair of the Sustainable Economy Task Force to give a report back. So Shani, I know you have to get back to Albuquerque, so why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, thank you, James. And thank you all for setting this up down here today, and for everyone who came out to the tour. And just good to see people in person and not be on a Zoom meeting. The economic transition representative that EDD is looking to hire is going to start in mid-October. And the hope is that we're going to have a press release out on her bio and background when she starts. That way we can share that. I don't have anything formalized to share with you all today, but that announcement, it's basically already October, so it'll be coming soon. And then I'm also working to try and do a contract for an economic transition consultant along with the representative, so that we can have someone who has more field experience and has built those relationships and really just is knows what New Mexico needs and kind of how to go about those, how to kind of move the work of both the council and the task force forward. So I think that's kind of all I have. I'm hoping to have updates out in the next, obviously before the 15th. The first day for that person is October 16th, so there should be announcements formalized in a press release coming from the department. Otherwise, the task force had our monthly meeting last week, and we'll be looking forward to kind of onboarding new staff and bringing people on so that we will have dedicated folks who are committed to this economic transition work and making sure that the department is kind of moving that forward how we can, getting a better look at the Energy Transition Act funds that went to several different agencies and kind of keeping an eye on that. And then of course, for the projects and stuff that are coming through the advisory council, the task force would like to hear from the advisory council how they're feeling about the projects and the industries and really where the focus should be for the task force. So we're looking forward to that.
Great. Thank you, Chair Harvey. Just really quickly, I'll open it up to any brief questions for you from council members.
And thank you to Juniper Language Interpretation Services LLC for helping do the live interpretation for the tour and the live interpretation for the SEAC meeting through the remainder of the fiscal year. We have finalized that, so thank you all for offering that support. We really appreciate it.
Excellent, thank you. And seeing no questions from council members, we'll jump back to the rest of our agenda and want to invite Rick Robertson from our Coastal Wind Towers Len project. He is the Vice President of Business Development for our COSA. So welcome.
Great, thank you, appreciate you and the invitation, and appreciate the chance to be here. I want to talk briefly about Arcosa. It's a name a lot of people may not recognize. So Arcosa is a diversified manufacturing company. We've been around for quite a while. We were part of another entity called Trinity Industries. We spun out about 5 years ago, a publicly traded company, about $2.2 billion in revenue. We've got a little over 5,000 employees across a range of different manufacturing operations. I'm going to flip to the next slide. So we have three primary businesses. Our first is our construction products business. We mine and sell aggregate specialty materials, lightweight, as well as some concrete materials. We have a transportation business. We're the largest manufacturer of inland river barges in the US. We also do some marine components and some castings for transportation. And then lastly, we have an engineered structures business, which is where I sit. We produce wind turbine towers, but we also produce traffic structures, cell phone towers, and utility structures. So I want to talk specifically about our wind towers business. We have been making wind towers for as long as, maybe not as long as the machine we saw out in the lobby has been around since the 1920s, but for large scale production of wind in the US, when the industry really started to develop, we were one of the first companies to manufacture towers for the wind turbine OEMs. We have 3 operating facilities right now, one in Illinois, one in Iowa, and one in Oklahoma. And I think more exciting, more importantly, we've got a new facility that we're opening up in New Mexico. In early part of this year, we purchased 2 buildings in Belen, New Mexico, and we're retrofitting those buildings so that we can make wind turbine towers. The process is ongoing. I was there yesterday, and there's a lot of work going on and a lot of work that still needs to be done. And the key for us here is, it's great to have Will go before me and talk about some of the transmission projects that are ongoing. We are a little bit at the tail of the dog when it comes to renewable energy projects. So as a component supplier to wind turbine OEMs, the developers, folks like Invenergy, develop not only transmission projects, but also renewable projects. They contract with wind turbine OEMs like GE, Vestas, Nordex, and Siemens Gamesa. And then those companies contract with us for the components for those products. We looked at New Mexico and, saw a real opportunity for some growth here. The SunZia project, both the transmission project as well as the wind turbine project, will be a significant renewable energy growth vector for the industry. And we feel that we're really well positioned to be providing components for that project. And boy, as soon as we're done with that, we can start sending them up to Will and Invenergy for the North Path project as well. So the facility, let me talk a little bit about our processes within these facilities. All our facilities are very similar. We start with plate steel that we get from a number of different sources. Here in the US, we use 100% US steel for our products. We cut the steel on a plasma table that goes through a blast booth to prepare the steel. We roll it into what we call cans. And then down number 5, we have what we call a long seam. So we weld those cans together. We put flanges on them as necessary. And then they go to what we call our grow stations, where we put those cans together to lengths of 120 feet. We cut a hole in them, put a door so that folks can go inside the wind turbines. Whole section goes through a blast booth and then is coated, and then we install ladders and the platforms for the technicians and then deliver to customers. So the processes and the workforce is a little bit diverse, very heavy towards welding. We do a tremendous amount of welding in our facilities, and I think if you looked at the backgrounds of the majority of the folks that are in our factories, is some sort of welding background, either a welding technician or a very highly skilled welders, especially with the door frames. That is all hand welding, and the folks that do that are are artists, as well as technicians, as far as I'm concerned. The facility that we found in New Mexico, I joke a little bit about these buildings, and that they were just perfectly designed for wind turbine towers. But the first building, that's to the north was originally built to build red Solo cups. And the building to the south was originally built for injection molded Adirondack chairs. So probably as far from wind turbine towers as you could possibly imagine. Surprisingly, the south building, which is the picture on the bottom, is a relatively new building, actually has perfect bay widths and crane infrastructure that we need for our sections. It was there yesterday, and apparently the dies that company used for the Adirondack chairs weighed up to 35 and 40 tons. So they have 40 and 50 ton cranes in that facility, which would never have crossed my mind that if you're making an Adirondack chair, you need a 40 ton crane, but that is a great facility. So what we'll be doing in that facility, and the reason that this facility is really very interesting for us, one was the size, the layout is very well suited for us. It has rail access, which is important for us in order to get steel. And it has really good road access. Most of our products leave by truck. So getting access to the interstate is important. As we look at our manufacturing process, it'll flow from the south building to the north building. The south building will be where we're doing plate cutting and welding. And then the north building is where we'll be doing blasting and painting. And that facility will be cutting steel the first week in January. There's a lot of work to be done there, but that is our timeline right now. And we have customers that are waiting for product. They'd like it sooner, but we're sticking to the original timeline we gave them. And we've got a clock that sits in all of our offices that's counting down to the first week in January to when we're going to be cutting that first plate. The facility itself, and this is all with public information. So we're going to be spending between $55 and $60 million on the facility, doing the building, extra land. We bought land to the north of these buildings for storage, equipment and upgrades. When we're running at full capacity, we'll be somewhere north of 225 employees. The majority of those will be, hourly employees, welders and technicians. We will have about 40 salaried folks, management, quality, some engineering support as well. The state has been a tremendous advocate and resource for us. The speed at which we were able to bring this together, that the EDD was able to work with us on an incentive package, and it was a long list of incentives. And I've listed them up there. I think there's six different incentives that we're going to be taking advantage of that exist within New Mexico. And, we're thrilled at the partnership that we've had with the city government, with the county government, and with the state government to really make this happen. They have been a invaluable resource in making the economics work, and as well as, more importantly, working with us to get the workforce in place. That was one of our biggest concerns when we visited the facility initially is, can we find enough people to do these jobs? And, working with the city, the county, the local community colleges, from a training perspective, we think we're in really good shape to be able to hire those employees. So happy to answer questions. I think that's the last slide I had. Happy to answer questions about what Arcosa is doing, why we're here in New Mexico, but we are thrilled that our latest expansion is here in the state of New Mexico.
Great, thank you. Appreciate the presentation, and just wanted to open it up to questions to council members for Invenergy or Arcosa. If you guys are still available for a couple minutes. Yeah. Great, awesome. So Patricia, I see you have your hand up.
Hi, thank you, both of you. Very interesting, very exciting work. I have two questions. First one is for the first presentation to Michael, sorry, Guerrero. And Michael, how did you find, or how are you finding the regulatory and the access process for implementing what you're doing in New Mexico?
Patricia, I think you mean is William? Yeah.
Okay, so
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm just looking at these screen names. I'm sorry.
No worries. I was piggybacking on his screen. The regulatory environment, I'm a little biased because some of my previous roles in New Mexico included working at the New Mexico State Land Office. and previously before that at a big real estate development. So I've had a lot of experience with the regulatory entities and agencies in the state. And so I've always tried to tout the ease by which things can get developed in the state. Despite the fact that we don't have any transmission lines coming out of the northeast corner of the state, the process we're finding going through public land and the partnership with RETA, which exempts us from certain permitting processes on the state level, it's proving to be a really smooth one on the state side. We are a little, I wouldn't say nervous or skittish, but the fact is that another big transmission line project, SEAC, is finally getting approval to turn dirt after having gone through basically 16 years of getting approval from the feds for their project. And so obviously we're hoping that all of the various changes that are taking place on the federal level to encourage transmission development, permitting reform, Fast 41, all of these various changes will help our process go through the 2-year window that they're estimating it should take. And so we're hoping that the Fed process takes that long. My experience with the state land office, having worked there for a couple of years, I'm hoping that that process is a smooth one. There's a lot of work that we're doing on the ground right now, which is meeting with various permitting agencies, state engineer for water, Department of Transportation, state land office, that would allow us to get things measured twice, so we can just cut once and go through the process next year in a smooth manner. And so hopefully, if you were to ask me in 2 years from now, I hope to say that the process went extremely well regulatorily on the part of the state and the feds.
William, really quick, which pueblos are you doing tribal consultation with?
Yes, our tribal consultation, and in fact, I do have to, I don't know if she's disclosed it, but Mayani Barudin is now a member of Invenergy of our team. I'm very happy about that because she comes from one of the pueblos that we were working with, Kiwa Pueblo. So we're working with 3 pueblos that we may go through, but we are consulting with the neighboring pueblos around the project, as well as doing the things that, for example, when you go through state land, you have to reach out and get notification to any pueblo that has had a historical connection to a certain area. And so we are engaging in a very extensive tribal outreach campaign led by Mayani that also includes Navajo Nation. We're dealing with all of the various changes that happen every year on the part of leadership at the pueblos, as well as the most recent change that happened at the administration level with Navajo Nation, with the new president being elected. And so, yeah, we're basically consulting with everybody.
Thank you. Patricia, you had a second part to your
Yes,
question.
thank you. That was a great answer. Yes, regarding manufacturing and all of the wind material or systems that you're building, are they export from New Mexico, or are you going to have both in-state and out-of-state markets, I presume?
That's for Rick.
Yeah.
You guys can join us up here if you want. I think we have a couple chairs.
Yeah, I'm gonna use there.
Okay.
I can scoot here and. Okay.
We expect both. We
Yeah.
definitely expect that the towers that we make here in New Mexico will make their way north, east, and west. There are projects, and will be future projects all around the state of New Mexico. And a lot of that will depend on our customers, where their projects are. But we have every expectation that a large chunk of them, we hope, will stay in New Mexico to support the New Mexico projects. But we fully expect that we'll be sending towers to Arizona and Nevada, Utah, hopefully Texas, Colorado, et cetera.
Perfect. Thank you. It's great. Thank you.
I think we have time for one more question. Glenn? Oh, 2 more questions. Yeah, we can do that. Glenn?
Mine's quick. I think that one of the things that precipitated Arcosa coming here, I was able to go to your opening when you had a pretty special guest, I would say. And it was announced there that Arcosa had received a pretty sizable order, correct?
Yeah, we did. So in conjunction with us building a new facility, we got a $750 million order from one of our customers that will be supported out of that new facility. So that made it a lot easier for us to make that investment.
And
Yeah.
any of that located here?
We're not sure where our customers are gonna want those. We transfer
You give them towers and-
title at the back of our door.
Got
And they come pick them up and move them to where they need them, but like I said, I expect that a lot of those, some portion of those will stay in New Mexico.
So, for any type of, certifications or industry standards, you can share information or offer?
In terms of
Um,
are the employees we're looking
yeah.
for? Yeah, so we certainly look towards some of the welding certifications. I'm the wrong person to ask about what those are. But we also have our own in-house training and certification processes that we put all of our new employees through. So even if we do hire folks that have some of the industry standard certifications, we have our own processes, Arcosa-wide, because we've been in the steel processing and welding business for so long. We have some very specific processes and training that we put all of our new employees through.
Okay, so you're not necessarily reaching out to any particular colleges or training programs?
We definitely are.
Okay.
So I know that our welding engineers are working with some of the folks in and around Albuquerque, some of the community colleges there with their welding programs. And we obviously would love to have folks come in that have some level of training already. But even with the certifications that they might get externally, we add to that with our own internal training and certification.
Excellent. Well, thank you, William, Rick, really appreciate it. Sorry, there was a question? Sure.
Right, I just wondered, is all the capacity spoken for, or is it a build it and they will come kind of deal? And the second part is, I'm hoping that it's the latter. Would there be an opportunity for counties like Clay County to tie in there? Something like that, even though we're not exactly on the route, we're at capacity with one transmission line. And I think it's limiting the benefit of existing power.
Definitely. I know a short amount of time, I'll give as quick an answer as possible. We are at the point where we are speaking to the customers of where our line will terminate, which is the Four Corners area, specifically the Four Corners substation, which is owned PNM, APS, and others. And so we're speaking to all of those about being customers of the power that's going to be sent across the line. So as of right now, it hasn't been spoken for. And then in terms of the question of other communities or areas tying into the line, I mean, that's a question that's still being considered. I know that we're determining the actual route, but in terms of aspects like that, that is something that there is a potential to explore. And so I think one thing that is helpful, I mean, I can leave my business card. We do listen to communities, elected officials and all that. We want to hear ideas and recommendations they may have. And so we welcome the conversation.
Great. Thank you, William and Rick. Appreciate it. Thank you. We're going to move on to the rest of our agenda. Thank you to our presenters. Continuing with focusing on wind power and technology. We'd like to talk about opportunities, challenges, and needs for the workforce. And so really pleased to have today joining us on Zoom, Raquel Gomez, who is a Special Projects Coordinator, Office of the Secretary, Department of Workforce Solutions. So Raquel, I believe we have you online.
Yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we sure can. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. So just as James mentioned, I'm in covering for Secretary Nair to talk to you all about the wind power workforce in New Mexico. I do have a presentation. Would I be able to share my slides?
Yes, we'll give you that permission here. Great, I think you should be good to go.
All right. All right, can you see?
Yes, we can.
All right, great. So thank you for having me. Today's presentation is going to review where the workforce is when it comes to wind energy jobs and opportunities for collaborating. So where we are, where we're heading, and how we can get there together. So we know that wind power is already a success story for New Mexico. The state has seen prolonged economic growth in its wind energy industry, and the industry now directly supports over 1,000 jobs in New Mexico. And you can see that in the slide. It's the blue existing jobs and the orange is solar jobs. The wind industry is expected to continue to see strong growth in the future due to New Mexico's Energy Transition Act, as we aim to double renewable energy used in this state by 2025, and as we move towards a carbon-free electricity generation by 2045. To achieve these targets, we know that there is going to need to be large attention to the workforce. Preliminary studies show that the transition to clean energy through the ETA will create many new jobs in the wind and solar industries, but there is a lot of work to do to reach this potential. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics projects that wind technicians will be the second fastest growing job in the country, only behind solar installer over the next decade. When we look at renewables at first glance, the salaries look very comparable to fossil fuel industries. So on this chart, we can see that wind electric power generation could earn an annual salary of $103,306 in comparison to fossil fuel electric power generation workers. But if we take a closer look, we can see that if we drill down to the level of the trades and labor, the salaries in solar and wind drop to half of those in the fossil fuels. So we know that those that are doing the work are getting paid less than their counterparts in the fossil fuel industry. So our focus is looking at how we make the shift away from fossil fuels to benefit the communities that need the most. The 2023 PFM report summed it up as investing in people and places. So where is it that we want to place focus? It's going to be in geographic areas with both high poverty and high unemployment, such as those located in Justice 40 communities that are experiencing population decline. One way that we've been combating the workforce challenges, right, is by participating and partnering with organizations and departments that are seeking grant funding from the Department of Energy and participating in the Community Benefits Plan. DWS has become really well versed with the requirements that DOE is seeking, which is a really great benefit in making sure that we support all of those initiatives. We need to make sure that as a community, as an agency, in partnership with other organizations, we're tackling barriers such as childcare, healthcare, and transportation in these communities by providing online access and skills training, and really getting creative with funding for education and training by incentivizing cross-training and multiple renewable energy trades for higher wages and possible extended work opportunities. I think Rick mentioned that they've seen some success in our Costa and getting employees on board, which is really great to hear. Partnership in the communities with our workforce connection centers and assisting employers through engaging those that are underemployed or unemployed and connecting them to skills and the community colleges and different types of programs, certification programs, degree programs, so that employees can get, or job seekers can get the skills they need to get employed in these trades, right? So DWS is excited to collaborate and be a big part of this initiative in New Mexico, especially when it comes to energy transition. The workforce is a big focus, and we understand that and are prepared to attack these challenges together. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Raquel. And if we could just pause on questions, we have two other presenters that are part of this section. And I just want to bring those folks up, if that's okay, if Raquel, that you can stick around. Excellent,
Absolutely.
thank you. So I would like to invite Andy Slop, who's the Director of Renewable and Sustainable Technology at Mesa Lands Community College. I hope I got your title right. And yeah, if you want to come up and join us. And Andy just led our tour of the facility here today. Thank you again for hosting us.
You're welcome. It's a good thing to have you here. It's great to have this happening. So I guess what I really want to talk about today is the need to have a center, the need to have a training facility, and to have it maintained well. Also, recruiting efforts in different parts of the state. When a student comes here, one of the first things they see, of course, is the wind turbine out back. And I think that's a huge draw to this school, is that we actually have a commercial turbine the students have hands-on. It's been compared to, I've been asked, why can't you get a little turbine that they can just work on down here? And it's kind of like training a long-haul truck driver in pickup trucks. You need a commercial turbine to climb to know if you can actually work 300 feet in the air and around the high voltage electricity. So it's nothing short of a miracle that we have this at our facility. I guess all the stars aligned when this was first put in 2008. I was helping to develop a wind farm in 2006. And I thought, who trains wind technicians? Once these are built, who trains them? I did a Google search and Mesa Lands Community College popped up. This building and this turbine was an artist concept. And I just kind of laughed like, oh, a little Tucumcari, New Mexico thinks they're going to get a brand new GE turbine. And we can't even get enough GE turbines to finish our wind farm. We had to go with another brand. And I just thought, wow, those guys are, it's kind of audacious, I guess. A couple of years after that, I was curious about this little school that goes from dinosaurs to cowboy arch to iron ore to the greatest technology in renewable energy. I looked and this building was here and the turbine was in place and my jaw just dropped. I could not believe this little school accomplished such a thing. There are not many schools in the United States that have a commercial turbine to train on. A few years ago, there were 3 of us that had a commercial turbine. I think there's 2 more that have been added to that. One of our companies that we work with recruit from 7 schools across the nation. They're hungry for people. That's not enough people. But we've also been kind of tasked with, we want our New Mexico students to get New Mexico jobs. And we realize that that's a real thing. We have communities that are hungry for high paying, good, secure jobs. And there's nothing like wind to bring up the economy in a small dying town. You've got ranchers that come back to life and the family can stay on the ranch because now they've got wind turbines on the ranch and family can stay home. Who trains them? We would like to think we train them to do these jobs. We're electricians, we're mechanics, we're plumbers, oil field workers. You combine all those experiences, and that's kind of what we do here as a wind maintenance technician. This year, the American Clean Power Association has come up with standards for an entry-level wind technician. I've been going to these conferences, been on these boards since 2005, trying to come up with standards for a wind technician, and they're so varied turbines, varied everything that we haven't done it. This year, they've done it. We will probably change our curriculum a little bit. We already teach a lot of that, but we will align with our professional organization and have a national certification. So for the first time, wind or renewable energy will have some kind of national certification. So that's coming. That will help out with our high schools. Those students that are enrolled in a dual enrolled program. We do have some of our classes offered in that dual program. The CTE, or Career and Technical Education programs in high schools, require some kind of certificate. Now we will have that certificate and we'll be able to go on that CTE program in the high schools. Our average wage that our graduates are starting at is about $26 an hour. Per diem average is about $150 a day if they're a traveling technician. That's usually full benefits. Not a bad starting wage, and they move up rapidly. This is a fast-moving industry. A lot of permanent wind farms will have technicians work on an average 9 hours of overtime a week, and that adds up fast too. A lot of our graduates will go into wind farm construction, maintenance, or commissioning, or any of the peripheries that have to do with wind. Anything that has to do with bolting, torquing, changing the gearbox oil, things like that. Blade work is another thing that is highly sought after, and you move it pretty fast in that as well. Not a lot of adventurers that want to rappel over the hub and do some blade repair. You're out in the weather quite a bit, but there's just so much opportunity here. This school has potential. Our turbine is aging. It's going to need some major repairs soon. So that's another thing that we would like to ask good neighbors if they would help, or the legislature, anyone that can give us ideas of how we can do that, because we do want to keep our training program alive and viable. Technology has changed quite a bit. Our turbine is 14 or 15 years old now. And it's great in one sense. It's starting to break down quite a bit, so we get to go fix it a lot with students and they get this experience. But when they go out and now they're working on 2 and 3 megawatt machines, and they've come from a 1.5 megawatt machine, it would be great to update the program a little bit. We've had one of our industry partners donate solar panels, and we have an appropriation to put in single axis tracking. So we have a commercial solar installation that will power our art building. We have a dual axis tracker out to the side that powers our servers for the campus. So we have wind, solar, battery storage on campus right now. We include that in our curriculum, but we'd like to expand that. We'd like to expand that, and we'd like not to just do photovoltaics, but we want to do what's called agrivoltaics, where we can grow something underneath the solar panels and show something that can be used. It's not just wasted land. We can graze sheep under it. We can plant things that'll grow, and then the runoff will be used to grow something instead of run into your neighbor and wash them out or whatever. So anyway, I think that's.
Thank you, Andy. Really appreciate that. And again, we have one more component of this presentation, and then we'll get into a discussion. So folks, hold your questions for a moment. I'd like to invite Professor Gabe Pasiniak from the University of New Mexico Law School to really talk through some of the opportunities in the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the IJA, which is Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And Gabe, I don't know if you have another colleague joining you on this, or is you?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Bowie and members of the council. So my colleague Janelle Johnson from Single Space Strategies is on virtually. I think that she'll let me do the talking, but I think she's going to drop some links into the chat to some of the programs that we talk about.
Thank you.
So thanks for this opportunity. So I do teach at the law school. I'm also and our law clinic actually does some work in this area supporting just transition. We work a lot with the Center for Civic Policy. We've worked with Mesa Lands to try to help them access some of these federal dollars. And I've been working with my colleague Janelle Johnson from Single Space Strategies on thinking through some of the barriers and opportunities to maximizing these federal opportunities for workforce development. And the opportunity here is huge. Right now, there is over $400 billion available through those two programs that you talked about, Chair Proviwa. And a lot of that money can be used for workforce development. But the key is that many of these grants are competitive grants. They take a lot of sophistication to go after. Also, workforce development is throughout baked in many aspects of these programs. I'll give some examples, but it's generally like, this is one thing you can do. It's not guaranteed. And so there's really a need to make sure that there's a comprehensive strategy to go after those funds to really support and maximize the dollars that New Mexico can use for equitable workforce development. So some of the opportunities are, we worked with Andy and Clay County to try to go after several grants here. The Government to Government Environmental Justice Grant, which comes out of EPA. I think we're going to try that again. We recently went after a rural energy grant to help realize Andy's vision to not just expand the curricular offerings here, but also to take the student enrollment from around 35 to 80 to bake into that some equitable outreach to communities, disadvantaged communities throughout New Mexico, so we can make sure that as many students are getting the benefit of this as possible, and thinking through things like childcare, housing, those issues that would really make this accessible to some of those communities. Unfortunately, we didn't get the nod to go ahead in the pre-application process, but we're going to keep looking for opportunities. I want to mention that more broadly, there's going to be environmental and climate justice block grant programs, over $3 billion available nationwide. These are mainly focused at NGOs, and here we've got a partnership. Center for Civic Policy has been working with the Wind Research and Training Center to try to get these grants. And very often that's how it's structured. The grant applicant might be a government like Quay County, like it was with the government to government grants, could be a CBO that has to be the lead applicant, could be higher ed like Mesa Lands, but oftentimes there's an incentive for these organizations to work together and to involve community partners. There's going to be the climate pollution reduction grants, which are the grants that the state is going to be able to apply for competitively. We'll also need to develop a workforce development plan, but really how big of a part workforce development is in that is going to be up to the state. And one of the challenges in this space, and it's not just here in New Mexico, is that we've got folks who are really climate policy folks like I used to be, and then we've got folks who do other things like workforce development. And very often it's the climate agency, like it is here in New Mexico, that's going to be the lead on developing this climate plan and figuring out what portions to apply for competitively to fund that plan. And so the challenge is going to be to integrate those people who are focused on reducing greenhouse gas emissions with those folks who are focused on how do we really make sure there's robust, equitable workforce development in this state. I'll just mention a couple other, there's going to be over $20 billion in green bank funds that are going to filter down throughout the country. Also workforce development opportunities, home energy efficiency contractor training grants, 200 million available. Some of that is competitive, some of that is state formula funding, and a career skills training program, $10 million available for community-based organizations. And you know, our experience working with Mesa Lands, and there was a team of us, Janelle, Michael, Andy, Daniel, lots of folks working together. We spent a lot of time just to identify potential grant opportunities, to figure out how to fit the vision into these boxes. The grants are very technical. I've got a law degree. I should be able to figure this out. It's not easy. There's subcontracting. So this is challenging work to go after these funds. And our concern is that New Mexico is going to lose out if we don't have more capacity building and more supports for our institutions across the state to get those. So to that end, we're advocating for more state support in match funding, which is more for tribal governments, local governments, as well as regional capacity building. My colleague Phoebe Swina, who many of you may know is a principal at High Watermark Engineering, and I will be testifying at the Legislative Finance Committee tomorrow on a proposal put together by Single Space and the Thornburg Foundation and several others. Just a very high level ask, can we have $200 to $300 million in state match funds to go after over $40 billion in federal funding that needs match funds? Can we also have $50 million for 5-year pilot to enhance regional capacity, perhaps through councils of government, perhaps through the state's 14 public education institutes of higher education, so that we can have additional support to folks like Mesa Lands that are trying to apply for these dollars. So I'll just wrap up and say beyond that, I would just emphasize that I think that this council could perhaps take on the work of thinking through how do you do that coordination piece? How do you make sure that the folks who are really focused on climate policy and have some of those opportunities through climate funding program are talking to the folks in government who are focused on workforce development and are incorporating community, tribal perspectives on what equitable workforce development means in this energy transition. And finally, I'll just say that we've got some recent funding at UNM for what they call a Just Transition Grand Challenge, internal funding. My colleagues Gabe Sanchez, Shannon Sanchez Youngman, Rob Del Campo, and I are trying to stand up this project. We're just at the very beginning of that, but we do have some resources. If there's a way that we can be helpful to the council, we'd love to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Pisiniak. And stay up here. Andy, do you want to join us? I think we can open it up to questions. This, we'll start with council members, but also can open it up to community members as well, as this is kind of the wrap up of the agenda for today. So yeah, any folks, council members, any questions for Raquel, Gabe, or Andy? Go ahead.
Yeah, actually a question for each of you, separate questions. The EPA's Thriving City Community, which is really focused on EJ and some of these communities. How would you foresee some of those funds helping with workforce development in places like Tucumcari or wherever? Because having been involved a little bit with some of that funding, there are many things that you can do in order to hit those underserved, I don't like that term, but that's how they're defined, those communities. And what kind of outreach would be necessary to pull in that kind of workforce development in your mind?
Thank you, great question. And as you know, there's an alphabet soup of funding. So there's several, I think, funding buckets that have thriving communities in there. There's the Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Centers, which NMSU got a grant to basically do some technical assistance. And so we've done some talking with NMSU. We hope to do more. There's also another, for this EPA region, there's also another, what they call TICTACs, Technical Assistance Center, that can also help CBOs. It's taken longer than I think everybody had hoped to roll those out. I think we're still waiting on details on exactly what kind of technical assistance will be possible. I know that there are some limits on how much individual hand-holding they can do or they're planning to do collectively. I don't know, can't speak for NMSU in terms of helping folks apply for specific grants. So that is one unanswered question for me. There's also these Thriving Community CBO grants, which are up to $500,000, I believe. And there's going to be another round of those coming out. I think those are great opportunities for community-based organizations, and they can apply for a broad range of projects, anything from addressing kind of more conventional environmental justice pollution to doing things like improving schools, improving the air quality in schools. They can do things like workforce development specifically. And we've talked about the ideas of, pilot programs that help with apprenticeship funds or paid internships or things like that. But it really does require knowing about that opportunity, realizing that there's got to be some connection with partners. So, if you're going to provide paid apprenticeships, you need to talk with folks who are perhaps sitting in a room, thankfully, who might be able to employ those apprenticeships. There's a lot of kind of transactional work that needs to be done. And that's where additional technical capacity, having a network of people around the state who are talking to each other, who know about these opportunities, who know in their specific region, who are the community-based organizations, who are the community colleges that could perhaps take advantage of this.
Other questions?
Yeah, I think you had 3.
Well, I have one for Andy as well, but I don't know if while we're grilling.
Yeah.
This person, if we want to
We can
keep
jump
that.
around, unless it's a follow-up.
Okay, you know, we had a little bit of this conversation earlier about where do you start recruiting students? Because I know my members that are in the solar industry, you know, they can't find them, and you know, the Santa Fe Community College had a really good program for a while, and they can't fill the programs. And I don't know where the nearest wind technology school is from here, but sounds like you would have a corner on that market. But do you start recruiting high school? You know, we talked about the tower climbing grease monkeys and those kinds of marketing things. And how can this council and how can the state and how can workforce development and RIA and RITA and all these organizations help you?
Well, I don't know exactly how you can help us, but here's bottom line. When a student comes to Tucumcari, they want a little entertainment in the evening. They want something a little more than sometimes we have to offer than just, I'm gonna work, I'm gonna get this degree, I'm gonna go get a good job. So if Tucumcari could grow a little bit in that direction, that would be nice. But student housing, it's kind of hard to find a place to live when you come here. So it'd be great to have some idea. We've even thought about having our building construction class build tiny homes and put out here and rent them out, and when they get a certain age, auction them off or whatever. But you know, it takes everybody in the community to do this. But I've thought, wow, I'm one of the, well, if you're older than me, you remember driving on Route 66 before I-40. And Route 66 is a big deal, and we push that for tourism. But what if we had renewable energy Route 66? What if Tucumcari was 100% renewable energy? What if we took Tucumcari bioenergy and ran that over to our 30 megawatt plant instead of diesel? We're going to burn now biofuels with the 30 megawatt. We run our power to the city, and we have our own utility. Now, Tucumcari can say we're 100% renewable energy. That might be a little out there and costly at first, but what an attraction to people to come here and come to school here. This whole town is into renewable energy, and we're going to get our renewable energy degree and move on. So, you know, what would that do to recruiting? I don't know. But just having funds to advertise on social media would be huge to my program. We're very limited on funds. I try to travel constantly out to schools to recruit in high schools, but I've got students sitting here that need my attention. So, you know, our recruiting efforts, just a little more funding would be fantastic. We've been involved with the Kid Win project, and Invenergy supports them in a big way. We bring students in from, well, we invite the whole state, but mostly the eastern part of the state come here for a competition. They build a little turbine, put it in front of in a wind tunnel, and the students that produce the most power out of this model wind turbine go on to nationals. Nationals was in Colorado this year, and that's huge. That's building our bench. That's getting these kids thinking about renewable energy at a young age, and by the time they graduate, they're thinking in this mode. So anything we can do for outreach, anytime I can speak to a civic organization or whatever, I'm glad to do it. But yeah, I really appreciate that question. Recruiting is it's hard, but placement is one of our best recruiting tools, and we have great placement, but just finding those students that are, yeah.
Thanks, Andy. And we have a couple questions in the queue, but I'll come up to you in a second. Raquel, you have your hand raised, and since you're a panelist, I wanted to make sure to go to you.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to add to the question regarding where do we find employees or where do we get the students. DWS has a pre-apprenticeship program. It's a new apprenticeship program, which we just started this year. We got some funding this year from the legislature, and we're looking to get recurring funding. But what it is we have placed career consultants in high schools, in the local high schools, where we're talking to the high school students about the opportunities in their local communities and connecting them with employers. And what DWS is doing is we're paying 400 hours of their wages at $15 an hour. We have a few success stories out in the communities. We had a class of 7 that were in pre-apprenticeship program, high school students. Some just graduated and they graduated from a 2-week course and then moved on to plumbers pipe fitters apprenticeship program. So it's these types of relationships through apprenticeship programs in the high schools, engaging the students where they are, reaching them directly with these opportunities. So having, career consultants in the local high school in Tucumcari, for example, we would be able to engage these students and keep them in their communities. So this is a direction that we're already moving towards. So it really is just building that relationship with the employers that have these opportunities available for them so that we can build that pipeline for the wind energy production and workforce. So that's, one way that we can definitely engage the students and feed them into that pipeline for future opportunities.
Thanks, Raquel. Wendy?
Yeah, this is a question for Raquel too. So there is some institutions on tribal lands that are providing programs for renewable energy. So how is Workforce Solutions implementing mini apprenticeships, or are they doing what you just shared as far as reaching out to the high schools? And how is this happening as we know we're under the energy transition there?
Right. Yes. So we have the pre-apprenticeship program, and then of course our apprenticeship programs located throughout the state where we're, engaging those that are interested in these training programs and getting them and paying or assisting with their wages as they move through the training program to get them graduated and placed with employers. So we have career consultants strategically located throughout the state who are working one-on-one with these individuals. Now, specifically for the Energy Transition Act, we have had a heavy presence in the northwestern part of the state, and the funding that we got went to direct payment assistance. We just finished phase 1 where we got 450 applicants, eligible applicants who were all eligible for one-time $20,000 payments. We are starting phase 2 mid-October. You should be seeing a press release in the next couple of weeks where we will be providing subsidized wages to those that have been displaced in the mines and choose to go into apprenticeship or training programs. So they're going to be eligible for monthly stipends for up to 12 months. Those that choose apprenticeship trainings or apprenticeship training will receive employment subsidies, so it'll go directly to their apprenticeship training in the form of wages. So as soon as we start phase 2, we'll share that press release, but that's where the funding has gone for the Energy Transition Act. So it has been in the form of direct payments to those that have been displaced.
Great. One question up there.
Well, not a question, but a statement for this gentleman. He asked about recruiting. You all have a couple of resources in this town that you may not have even thought of. I am a recovering truck driver. So you have Loves and Flying J. You'd be surprised at how many truck drivers feel trapped in the field. If you had set commercials, whatever, live commercials on the televisions, kind of show the school, show a little bit of the, what it takes, as far as, you'd be surprised. I've talked to 3 different truck drivers in the last month or so when I was walking my dog over there. And a couple of them seemed interested and were intrigued, but you never know.
Billboards are working.
Yeah. Thank you. Glenn, you had a question, I think. No, you didn't. Not for
I got them both out.
Excellent. Any other questions, folks? Ma'am.
James, I've chatted a question.
Oh, okay, I will take a look. And go ahead.
Le quiero preguntar que si alguna vez ha ido a Hub, al señor, a la escuela de Hub.
I wanted to ask the gentleman if he has ever gone to the high school in Hobbs.
In Hobbs. Yes, we've gone to Hobbs. I didn't personally go to Hobbs, but our recruiter went to Hobbs. I've been to Lovington and around, yes.
¿Y cuántos reclutó?
How many people were recruited?
None.
And two, the question in the chat, which I think is really connected. So barriers to wind and solar, according to UNM's study presented by Department of Workforce Solutions, which happened in 2021, included language access, rural residents access to workforce development programs, certification programs, apprenticeship programs, adult access to these programs, and immigration status. So a slew of barriers for many different groups. So how is Mesa and then also DWS looking to overcome these specific barriers?
Well, if I may go first.
Sure, go for it.
We have started an ESL program, English as a second language, here at the school. We do have some Spanish speaking instructors that do help us out with some tutoring. But mainly, we try to portray the industry, and if they're comfortable here at the school, they should be comfortable in the industry. And we have all kinds of people that, you know, I used to joke with people when I go to the high school and I'd say, well, girls can't do this job. And they would get so upset with me. I'm like, of course they can do this job. But we have maybe 1 or 2 female students a semester, and that's pretty much what the industry reflects as well. So we've made some videos here that have some of our female students up on tower talking about the job, talking about their training here, and then once they get out on the job, they send us a little video back. So I don't know, other than trying to make them feel at home here, make them feel comfortable, and let them see, yeah, you can do this. And we put out it's just a 1-credit class that allows a high school student, we've got our insurance to go down to a 16-year-old. If someone between their junior and senior year wants to take this 1-credit climb class and come up and climb our tower, that might be the tipping point. I can't work at heights, I'm scared. Well, come put on the safety equipment, let's get you up there and let's see. And most of the time it's, yeah, I feel safe, I can do this. With that 1-credit class, that would allow any dual student in the state to take that class and come over and actually see. This is an industry where, you know, there are some barriers to someone that's terrified of heights. So we've kind of got to explore that out. Are you terrified of electricity? We're making it. So anyway, hopefully we've knocked those barriers down. There again, I think we just need to get the word out that that's available. So,
Can I just add on to that briefly? In the application that we worked together with Andy on, this was a pre-application, so it wasn't very detailed, but we proposed a pilot program that would recruit specifically from disadvantaged communities. And of course, we didn't get the funding for it. This was a big application that would have involved money to repower the turbine. It was mostly focused on infrastructure and technology, but there are opportunities. This application program, this grant program, like others, was asking about, well, you know, is there going to be, how is this going to help environmental justice communities or energy communities? And so there are opportunities for kind of creative, innovative thinking to address how do we get to, you know, predominantly Spanish-speaking communities or Latino communities, but it requires work to go after those funds.
Thanks. Raquel, and then, you know, I think just want to raise some of the aspects of this question out as well. So especially like language access, immigration status, in addition to the others. I think you can see the question in the chat too, Raquel.
Yes, yes, sir. So yeah, responding to Marcella's question, DWS has community health workers that we have engaged through our Navigator grant, which was awarded last year. And this is where we train community health workers in unemployment and our employment services to connect those that are in the rural communities to our DWS services, right? So us going to them and engaging the communities. We also work closely with the Office of Broadband to ensure that services are in those hard to reach communities. We encourage and work with community colleges and other community-based organizations to prioritize and make sure that there is online access to programs and certification training programs. And then, of course, I think we're the Department of Workforce Solutions, we're federally funded. So unfortunately, when it comes to immigrant status, in order to receive any type of services, you do have to be a citizen, have a social security number when it comes to receiving funding from WIOA or our employment services that's funded through Wagner Pizer. So unfortunately, at this time, there isn't services for our immigrant populations. Although we do provide assistance with like resume building and job search to anybody walking in. And if we're not registering in our workforce protection online system, immigration status is not verified. So people can usually come in and get employment services.
Thank you. And Rick, I don't know if maybe you want to, sorry to call you while you're sitting in the audience over there, but yeah, I mean, as an employer or developer, does Arcosa, are there particular, do you have any requirements or practices to reach specific communities or individuals?
Yeah, and I'm gonna probably apologize if I'm probably not the right person to answer that question. You certainly can check with our HR folks to understand what the policies are. I think the answer is I'm sure we do. I'm just not up to speed on what those are.
Got it, no problem. Thanks.
I can
Sure.
answer that on behalf of Energy. We're trying not to recreate the wheel. And what we're trying to do is find the best resources. So we are engaging with educational providers, labor unions, different programs for training. And so we're just really trying to go in a scattershot approach to try to see where we can get the best recruiting options possible. So yeah, we're always open to suggestions as well.
Thank you. I see one question in the chat. Charles, it's incredibly long, so I'm just going to let you ask the question.
Okay, yeah, sorry. It's really more of a statement than a question, but I was suggesting that, so recently, to fill some state or open positions in state agencies, Environment Department, MNERD, some groups, advocacy groups have helped publicize those positions. I'm thinking maybe there's a parallel here that you don't have to just go through your official, like I don't know, if your college did an ad or something, you might share that with a lot of people in the broader community. I was thinking of STEM education and advocacy groups, climate and clean energy groups, people who'd like to see this succeed. I also, as an afterthought, of course, chambers of commerce, economic development folks, I think would want to see your program succeed in New Mexico too.
Great, thank you. So we're gonna go to one last question. Yeah. Not at all.
So my question goes to whoever can answer it. I was wondering if there is a plan. I know with the just transition, it's going to be whether oil and gas, dies out by itself or the state halts processing. I'm from Artesia and we've got people from POTS. So that's our economy runs on it. We're all for, renewable resources. And I feel like it's a great way to help the environment and help our communities. However, I was just kind of wondering if there's a plan to reach southeastern New Mexico with, training for doing the new jobs that are coming into the state. I feel like we just are a bit excluded, from the training and everything like that. And I was wondering if there's a plan, not only for, US citizens, but all New Mexico residents, regardless of our status. They're working out in the oil field, so they're still gonna need a job whenever it runs away. And I think that's the state's responsibility as well, to keep the economy running. And so I was just wondering if there's some sort of plan to transition them as well with the transition.
Can I chime in on this? No, I really appreciate where you're coming from. We are not restricted, so to say, for our operating area. For this community college, I don't go to Clovis and start recruiting because Clovis Community College is there. They have an industrial class there that has a wind component, and they bring their students up to climb our turbine for that wind component. Now, I don't want to step on any other community college's toes and go recruiting outside my area, but I've been invited to several places throughout the state to recruit because we're kind of a unique program. If no one else has a program, then I can come and talk to you about it. And I would love to come down and recruit, talk, or whatever, even if it's just step into a class and educate how math is used in this industry. Be glad to do it. But no, I think that we don't want to leave anyone behind. And if we diversify that energy mix, all the better. But yeah, thank you for your question.
Thank you. It's an incredibly important question, and I'd argue it's one of the big questions that this council and the task force needs to answer, in addition to, as you were saying, the obligation that the state has to transition all workers as we transition away from the extractive industry. And I saw Joseph's hand up for just a second.
I think he's still on.
Okay, great. And this will be the last question before we go to public comment. So, Joseph.
Thank you, Chairman Poviwa and members of the committee. I have a question for Okasa. You mentioned American steel production for the source of making the towers. First off, my brother works as a rigger for Vestas, which is now CS Winds, an hour north of Pueblo. An hour north of Raton in the town of Pueblo, which also has a steel mill that generates or creates its steel from 100% renewable energy. Is just considering your source of steel and taking into consider like the carbon impact, is factories like the one north of Raton, are they suitable for steel production for the towers that are created from renewable energy? And that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that steel mill, but we have been spending a lot of time with our steel suppliers, and they are making a significant push to understand the carbon footprint, that they have as part of their processes. I was just with one of our suppliers. They were going to be in the process of introducing what they call zero carbon steel. So they've taken essentially carbon out of the entire process. So renewable energy to process the steel, looking at where their inputs come from, how they transport it. So certainly the steel manufacturing industry across the board is looking at their footprint. And, we'll use the mills that are the appropriate product for us. But yeah, there's definitely a push across the entire manufacturing chain to bring carbon out of that process.
Great, thank you, Rick. Sorry, I unmuted for a second. So we're gonna move here to public comment. Thank you all, and yeah, thank you to our presenters. And so, yeah, either online or in the audience, is there any particular public comment? Michael, you raised your hand.
Thank you, Chairman Portby and members of the council, for coming to Tucumcari and having this meeting. Thank you, Andy and Mesa Lance for hosting. I want to follow up actually on Felix's point. I think what's missing really is a plan. I mean, if we looked at, you know, the whole situation after COVID in particular, Santa Fe College had budget cuts, right? And they cut their solar program. I don't know if it was completely, but definitely significantly reduced. Joseph and I just came from Navajo Technical University, right? Derek Lee is running a great program there, but his program is in a bungalow and his equipment is in trailers. So they need facilities, right? Andy talked about the need for the upgrade here for the wind tower. Everybody has brought up the issue of housing, right? Not only for students, like Andy pointed out, but even for workers to go to even take the jobs down in Corona with the Sunzia project. William may be running into that problem, workers up there building wind towers in Clayton and transmission lines. So what is missing is the coordination, and the IRA, even if we looked at the state's economic strategic plan, the IRA has changed the whole landscape now, right? It's made it possible for Arcosa. It's made it possible for Maxion. It's bringing 2,000 solar manufacturing jobs. And we are not prepared for that in terms of our infrastructure to get workers into those jobs. And so I think as an advisory council to the SET force, I think that interagency coordination and with the legislature, the investments that are needed to really build up this whole infrastructure is really critical. And there's just going to have to be a lot of investment made and a lot of coordination amongst the colleges, with the unions, the community, everybody across the board. It really is kind of an all hands on deck moment. And so I think that coordination, that collaboration is absolutely critical across the board right now.
Thank you, Michael. Any other public comments? Excellent. Oh, Steffi, please go ahead.
Thank you for letting me give a public comment. I just am so blown away by what I've heard today about the wind project and the wonderful program at the college, which I talk about as much as I can. 350 New Mexico is developing a climate change curriculum, and we ask the kids if they're afraid of heights, and if not, we tell them about the wind program there. But I do want to also mention that with the IRA and the electrification that we must do in the state to help people save money and have healthier environments in their houses, we need people who are installers, especially for heat pumps, and people can't do that often without having their electrical panel upgraded. New Mexico's housing stock is really old. There's a significant amount of houses that were built that still have 60 amps in their electrical panels. And we really need to have people who know how to do that, and a workforce program for that would be great. But this is going to be a huge barrier for getting heat pumps into people's houses. So I really appreciate all the work that everyone here is doing on workforce development, because I think this would be a great apprenticeship program. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, final call for Marcella, please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, James and members of the council. This has been very helpful, of course, as always, and I think repetition is a good thing, and I just want to share again for folks who are new at this meeting, who weren't at the last SEAC meeting that we hosted in Hobbs, that Somos has some very specific policy recommendations that could address some of the barriers to these really great programs that were discussed today. And one is because so much, and I appreciate the presentation on federal funding, but a lot of the federal funding really is restrictive, as was noted, but one of the major restrictions is being able to work with mixed status families and immigrant families. And so one of the key things that we can do as a state is ensure that there is, out of this, multi-billion-dollar surplus in our budget, once again, from oil and gas families and workers in the Permian Basin, that we put some of that money to augment WIOA funding and federal funding so that we can expand more flexible funding so that we can expand eligibility to include immigrants and other eligibility that is restricted when it comes to federal funding in all its forms, including WIOA funding. So that's one major policy recommendation that SOMOS will be pursuing in this next year. And then also, again, a lot of the 4-credit certification programs through community colleges are a little bit out of reach for undocumented mixed status families. And that is because we have to pay out-of-state tuition rates, and we get no other form of financial aid to be a part of those programs. And so that is another policy barrier that is worth recommending to the Sustainable Economy Task Force, and also that is worth supporting as we move forward from the southeastern part of the state. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Marcella. Okay, a last call for any community comments, public comments. Excellent. So our next Sustainable Economy Advisory Council meeting will be in October on the 23rd, 3 to 4:30. More information to come on that in a timely fashion. And I will, as chair, entertain a motion from council to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you, Glenn.
Harry, second.
Wendy and Jonathan, second. And third. All in favor, aye.
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 Thank you all. We are adjourned. Thank you to Mesa Lands Community College. All right.